Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It is December the 28th. Sorry, it is January the 28th, and we're beginning our readings in Exodus and chapter 19. Now, in chapter 19, we have the record of the momentous event of the giving of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai. It took 3 months for Israel to get from Egypt to Mount Sinai. This mountain in southwest Saudi Arabia can be visited today. It's called by the locals Jebel Musa, the mountain of Moses. The Lord gave a clear and great promise of blessing if only they will keep the commandments of the Lord. He promises that if they obey him, then he will make them a peculiar people above all the nations of the earth. They will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, this expression, which is also used in the New Testament in Peter's letters, is not ever said about the church. It can only be used of Israel, because the church is never a single nation. It is made up of individuals of every nation. These words were spoken before the people of Israel, and the people responded, saying, "All that the Lord has said, we will do." Now, they were brave words. Then the Lord told Moses to prepare the people by washing themselves and their clothes, because in 3 days the Lord will come down onto the top of the mountain. And then the Lord told Israel to be very careful not to come near to the mountain. Anyone who did come near was to be executed. And when they hear the long sound of a trumpet blast, they are to gather to the Lord at the bottom of the mountain. On the 3rd day, first thing in the morning, when the children of Israel woke up, they heard thunderings and saw lightning and a thick cloud on the top of the mountain. And they heard the sound of a very loud trumpet, which caused everyone in the camp to be very afraid. When the Lord came down onto the top of the mountain, the whole top of the mountain was burning like a furnace, and smoke ascended like a huge cloud, and the mountain quaked tremendously. The Lord called Moses to go up the mountain, so he went up, and then the Lord told him to go down the mountain and warn the people not to break through the boundary of the mountain, lest they die. He told Moses that the priests were to sanctify themselves, that is, they were to wash themselves and change their clothes, lest the Lord should destroy them. Moses and Aaron went up the mountain, and the Lord gave them what we call today the Ten Commandments. The Lord began by setting out the context of these laws. He said, "I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." This law, therefore, is specific to Israel. It applies specifically to them and is never applied generally to uncircumcised Gentiles, and especially to Christians. So we have a series of commandments. We have 3 commandments that are related to God. First of all, you shall have no other gods before me, because their worship was to be sacred. The second commandment was, you shall not make graven images. So their work was sacred. They were not allowed to use their work to make idols. And you shall not misuse the name of God. You will not take God's name in vain. You see, the very name of God was sacred. Now, the 4th commandment, which is a commandment that's never reiterated to anybody other than to the Jews, and certainly not to Christians: remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You see, their rest was going to be sacred. And then we have the 5th commandment. Now, the 5th, 6th and 7th commandments are commandments related to family. First of all, thou shalt honour thy father and thy mother. This means respect and provision for their sake, for their parents, and that must be sacred. That is holy. You shall not murder, and that's because life is sacred. Of course, that's thou shalt not kill doesn't just mean bringing somebody's life to an end. It means premeditated murder. You shall not commit adultery. Now, marriage was to be sacred. And then we have 3 more commandments. They're related to one's neighbours. You shall not steal. You see, your own possessions and the possessions of your neighbours are sacred. They're not to be taken into your possession. You're not to take into your possession anything that you have not rightfully earned or received honourably. You shall not give false witness. So the reputation of your neighbour is sacred, and that means that you're not to give a witness against your neighbour that's not true. And lastly, you shall not covet. And in particular, the Lord explains all the different ways in which covetousness takes place. You're not to covet your neighbour's wife. You're not to covet your neighbour's form of transport. You're not to covet your neighbour's house. Thou shalt not covet. So your own personal desires are to be sacred, and they're not to go over the boundary into sin in which you desire to have something which is not rightfully yours. Now when the people saw the mountain quake and the thunder and the lightning, they went back and they stood afar off to look on. But Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. And then the Lord instructed Moses that when the children of Israel want to offer a sacrifice, it must be on an altar of stones. There the Lord promised to be with them and bless them. The stones must be taken from the earth, not having any tool working on them. If men work on the stones, then the stones are polluted. The altar is not to be high up, because the priests, when they climb, his legs would be exposed, and this would be to show one's nakedness. This would be a great sin. Now, there's just so much in this passage, but I would like to bring to your attention just 2 verses. The first one is verse 5. He says, Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all the people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, we could pass over all these words, but they're all so very significant. I want to focus upon that little phrase at the end. Now, you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests. We've talked about that already. And a holy nation. A holy nation. The children of Israel, from this time onward, would be a holy nation, or rather they ought to be a holy nation. They were a holy nation in a holy land. They were a nation that was clean, that was God-fearing, that kept the commandments of the Lord, and there was provision made within the ordinances of the Lord to keep them clean. There was provision made with the priesthood whereby they could be cleansed, and there was provision made whereby their sin could be covered. And then there's another little phrase at the very end. This is going to be my password for today. Just listen to this. It says, the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. Now that is a tremendous verse. People were afraid. And do you think that Moses was not afraid? I believe he was afraid. However, in spite of his own fear of God, he takes the courage to draw near to where God is. So that's my thought for the day. I look forward to catching up with you all again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Bye for now.